Your puff puff has been giving you issues. That problem is about to end here right now. In my last video, I got the request to do a video of how the consistency of your puff puff will be when you mix. Since I have also wanted to do a video of how to mix puff puff in the past, so I decided, okay, why not give it a try? Let me do a video of how to mix your puff puff and fry it correctly. Remember, we made puff puff mix and we packed that puff puff mix. So what I am going to be mixing now is the puff puff mix I portioned in a Ziploc nylon. So I want to show you how the puff puff mix looks when you portion it in a nylon and how it will look when you are mixing it. We already have boiled water, not boiled water, but we are going to warm water. Then we add water to it to make it lukewarm. So a lot of people were asking me how long your puff puff mix can last. So if you are going to keep your puff puff mix in a deep freezer or refrigerator, your puff puff mix will not freeze, number one. Then your puff puff mix can last you over a month. Nothing will happen to it. Your yeast will not lose potency. Your yeast will still keep working. I could remember when I was starting Small Chops making, there were times I had issues of how to mix my puff puff and how it will rise. So there was a time I mixed my puff puff and I kept it in a warm place, and for a very long time when I returned back there, the puff puff was the same way I left it. It did not rise at all. This is my puff puff mix. This is a 1 kg puff puff mix. So what we do with this puff puff mix is we mix it, we turn it into a bowl, we mix it, we keep it for a while, then we come back to it. It would have risen by then we'll fry the puff puff. If you mix your puff puff and it is not rising at all, it is either your yeast is no longer active or your sugar is too much in the flour. See, if you mix your puff puff and it is not rising, I repeat again, that means either your yeast is no more good or your sugar is too much in that puff puff. So this is the lukewarm water. How I got my lukewarm water is I warm water in a kettle, then I put another water, that's cold water, in a bowl, then I add the warm water in the cold water so that I can get lukewarm water. That means water that when you put on your body or you put on your palm, that water cannot hurt you. So you are going to pour the powdered mix into a bowl, then you add water bit by bit. You add it bit by bit and you mix with your palm. You mix it thoroughly. So you mix to avoid lumps and you mix so that your puff puff can get good air inside. Over time, I have also noticed that the more you mix your puff puff, the faster it rises. Some of the things you can also do to avoid your yeast losing potency is to make sure that after opening it, find a bottle, like something like a bottle where you can turn the yeast into to avoid losing its potency. You know, sometimes in some cases when you pour your yeast in a nylon, that yeast, before you know what is going on, when you come back there, you will see that the yeast has fallen outside of the nylon. In that case, the yeast will no longer work properly. You think that, oh, I have yeast already. When the day you now need to use it, but when you bring it out and use it for your flour, you've noticed that the flour or the puff puff will not even rise. It will just remain on the same spot. This is the consistency you should aim at when you are mixing your puff puff. Make sure your puff puff is not too thick. If your puff puff is too thick, when you are frying it, it will come out looking like buns. But if it is running like this, it should not be overrun, I beg. Because if it is running like water, you will not even be able to portion the puff puff into the vegetable oil. Then when you are mixing into a bowl, look at the kind of bowl you are mixing into. Is it a bowl that has cover or is it a small bowl? Because sometimes the puff puff you are putting in a bowl matters a lot. I mean the quantity now. Because when you put a quantity of a puff puff that the bowl cannot take, the puff-puff will rise and it will spill over on the floor. We are leaving our puff-puff here to rise for at least 30 minutes. It should not be up to 30 minutes before you start seeing signs of the puff-puff rising. You do not need to go and keep the puff-puff in a warm place, maybe in the oven or something before the puff-puff rise if your yeast is active. Only in cases where maybe the weather is cold, is rainy seriously, that is the cases where you have to put your puff-puff in a warm place. So you should not be using vegetable oil that is too small to fry puff-puff. You should use vegetable oil that can cover the puff-puff. That's deep frying. You see the type I am using here. Now I want to explain something to you. This is not the best way for you to fry your puff-puff. In this case, this oil is not hot enough. So when you drop your puff-puff, the puff-puff will not jump out of the oil. You will start turning and turning and turning. In this case now, I had to turn the heat up very high so that the puff-puff can fry faster. So that's the problem I will have when I do this, is that my puff-puff will become like buns. It will look like buns. Some part of the puff-puff will be hard, some part will be flat, some part will look cracky. Do you understand? Some of us will fry our puff-puff like this. We don't let our oil get very hot before we start frying. So we will now have puff-puff that look like buns. So that should not be the case at all. So when you are portioning, make sure there's water by your side, so that when you are portioning, you put your hand in water and you start portioning. When you drop your puff-puff in oil, just like this, the puff-puff should bounce back. That is the time you know that your oil is hot enough to start frying the puff-puff. So you can portion any number of puff-puff you want, the one that your bowl or your pot can take. That's the number you should portion. It will get to a point where you also know that it is enough. So you turn your puff-puff. So what you do is, when you see that your heat is very high, try to reduce it. Try to alternate between high and low heat, high and low heat, high and low heat. If not, some part of your puff-puff will be brown, while some part will be light, very light, white, like white. You see two shades of color on your puff-puff. Some part will be. So what I'm doing here is, I'm trying to the puff-puff is now sticky on my palm, but I touch water and I start portioning again. The puff-puff will now start dropping easily. That is what I am doing by touching the water and frying. So the water is not dirty water. Before you guys start talking about the water is dirty, your water is not clean. It is the water I am using to fry. So, and I have also washed my hand. So if you are frying in large quantity, please always make sure you reduce your heat before you portion the whole puff-puff. Portion like maybe 100 pieces, I'll be 150 pieces in your bowl, in your pot I mean now. So you portion the 100 pieces, then you now increase the heat. At this point, all your puff-puff will get fried at the same time. They will get done at the same time. It is not the time to start removing one puff-puff, two puff-puff, three puff-puff from the oil. This will slow down your work. Make sure your oil is hot enough. Portion all the puff-puff at the same time, increase the heat, then turn the puff-puff and bring all of them out of the fire at the same time. If you rewind and go back, you will see that first puff-puff we fried, the one we used in testing the oil, you will see it in the basket. It is looking very bad. I don't like it. Each time I see it in my puff-puff, I just throw it away, because I'm a lover of very round and perfectly fried puff-puff. Just in case you don't understand what I am doing here, there was a previous video where I showed you how to make puff-puff mix. Then I am now showing you how to mix the puff-puff and fry it. This is not how to make puff-puff mix. This is how to mix the puff-puff mix and fry it. Our yummy puff-puff is now ready. Let us go and see how to eat the puff-puff. We sell that 1 kg puff-puff mix, and that 1 kg puff-puff mix will give you 130 small chop size puff-puff. I trust I have been able to do justice to this video. Please kindly give me a thumbs up, share this video, tell me thank you, I am doing well. Thank you so much for watching my videos and sharing them with your friends. I love your comments also. They are very, very, very encouraging. Please tell me thank you in this video. I think I am doing very well. What video should I do next? You can see that if you have an event now, you do not need to waste your time. Just make puff puff mix, take it to the venue of your event and fry your puff puff. Thank you.